Hello, you too, Mr. Mags here. Every good story needs a good villain, and Pokemon is definitely no exception to this. The villain of any given Pokemon game can honestly make or break people's enjoyment of those games. Some people really like the fifth generation of Pokemon because they adore Team Plasma so much, and some people maybe felt a little let down by Sword and Shield because the villains of that game were admittedly subpar. And honestly, I have a lot to say about every single Pokemon villain team. So I thought today I would present to you my analysis and potential fixes for every single Pokemon villain team. So let's jump right into my presentation. Okay, let's jump right in my presentation where I will attempt to fix every single Pokemon villain team. So starting off with the criteria for how I'll be analyzing their teams, the first one being overall team strength. Some some villain teams are honestly very big roadblocks. Others just feel like nuisances by the end of them because they're so easy and like you just kind of get annoyed every time they show up because it's, oh, just another one of these fights. So that will be a major factor in how I analyze these teams. Originality slash personality. Some villain Pokemon teams can have very solid teams, but they lack a lot of originality. A lot of their Pokemon overlap with other major trainers, and to the point where when you fight them, you felt like you've already fought this team before. And sometimes they have a solid team, it doesn't really seem to fit the vibe that specific person is going for. Um, or in case of one we'll talk about in just a second, the team that they have is very similar to other members of their team. Like they're an admin and other admins have the same Pokemon they do, and it just feels very repetitive, even within the team itself. So that's what that is all about. And then how well they represent the region or the theme that they are going for. Similar to the second category, ideally, a villain needs to be memorable for the Pokemon that they use. And along with that, ideally, they will be using majority Pokemon that are from their region. And lastly, I will be analyzing and trying to fix the best team of each named character that you fight during the main story of any given Pokemon game. There are certain villain team members that have like post-game fights or something like that where they do end up having a better team, but this will be specifically admins and uh like villain bosses and anyone else who is like kind of affiliated with them that's like a named character that you fight during the main story of the game. Okay, so with all that out of the way, starting off with Team Rocket. So first we have the Jesse and James fights from Pokemon Yellow. Now this is a good example of how I emphasize the best team. Um, for Jesse and James, this is technically the fullest team that Jesse and James ever have. In the Let's Go remakes, there is a post-game fight, but they're only ever fought in a double battle, and in that fight, they only use Weezing and Arbok. They don't even use Meowth in those fights. So this is technically the most full team, the best team that Jesse and James have. And I'll kind of go a case by case basis going forward, but at least in this particular instance, this is the team that they used when he fought them in the Silph Co in Yellow. And it's a solid team. It's very reminiscent of their anime counterparts, which was the entire point of that game. So this is solid. However, I do kind of wish you had one more fight against them. Ideally, where they would use their Victory Belt and Lickitung from the anime. Maybe this would be like a mandatory gym gym fight right before you fight Giovanni because some of the some of the trainers in Giovanni's gym have five Pokemon, so it wouldn't be out of place for them to also be here and have five Pokemon. Or maybe this could be some post-game fight or something like that. But regardless, the original team is solid enough for that point in the game, but I don't know. I think it'll be fun to have a team fully representing how they were in the anime with their Lickitung and Victory Bell. And especially if this were the Let's Go games, you could just say, oh, Meowth is just with them, and this is this would be a double battle where James uses Weezing Victory Bell and Jesse uses Arbok Lickitung. Next up, Petrol. His team irritates me because it's five coughing and a wheezing. Not only do you just fight a lot of coughing throughout the entirety of Team Rocket and several other places throughout the region, it's just very tedious to fight. I know that's kind of what they were going for. They wanted a team where the entire purpose for them is just to poison you, to make you miss with smoke screen, and then blow up in your face while you're being frustrated trying to fight. That I can kind of respect that to an extent. However, when you're actually doing the fight, if you have a good psychic move or a very strong special attack, you can just kind of mow through him without really thinking about it, without much trouble at all. So even though I can kind of almost respect what they're going for, in practice, I really don't like it. Now, originally, I kind of thought to keep a similar idea going where he has like four or five Pokemon that their job is just to blow up on you, like, Voltorb, Graveler, Fortress, like those kinds of Pokemon. Um, but I decided to go a different direction. I decided to essentially kind of lean into him as a character because look at him, he's just a weird guy. So I thought I would give him a team of three just weird Pokemon that weren't really used anywhere else. Those being Hypno, Parasect, and Octillery. Now, these Pokemon, admittedly, they are not great, but there's almost kind of something poetic about this Team Rocket ad like organization not being like super strong because they are, these remnants of what Team Rocket used to be. So one of their admins having a Parasect kind of feels indicative of that. But Hypno and Octillery can at least, Hypno is at least especially bulky, and Octillery can deals pretty strong damage. I think it has 105 special attack or like somewhere around there. Um, so if you can't one shot it, it could potentially take out a Pokemon or two. And Parasect, same thing. If you can't one shot it, it can still put you to sleep with Spore. So it's not the overall best team, but it can still be annoying. Actually, Hypno can also pretty reliably put you to sleep. So um I think this team fits his personality very well. Next up, Proton. This team irritates me even more than Petrol's team because it's a Golbat and a Weezing, two of the most overused Pokemon in all of Kanto and Johto. Golbat, you you fight this team right after you fight your rival down in the like under the Goldenrod underground, and he also had a Golbat there. And then his Weezing, Petrol just had a Weezing. So why is Weezing his strongest Pokemon here? I kind of understand how this happened because Proton is essentially like the character is an amalgamation of two different admin type characters that were in Gold and Silver, because all of the executive level characters were just called Rocket Executive. There was a male and a female sprite. So when you fought the one in Slowpoke Well, he just had a coughing, and then when you fight the one that where Proton is in Goldenrod, he just has a Golbat. So they kind of fuse them together, and I kind of get that, but I really wish they instead just overhauled his team entirely. He can still have the Zubat and Coughing. I think he has both of those in Slowpoke Well, but then when he gets here, do something better with his team so that his ace is not the same as Petrol's ace, and then his only other Pokemon is one that you either just fought on Silver's team or have fought several other Pokemon in their line on other grunt teams. So even though I think Proton has one of the coolest designs of any admin in this entire presentation, his team really irritates me. So I really wanted to give him a better team. And the team that made sense to me was Electabuzz, Magmar, Porygon 2. Now you could be kind of like, kind of hokey and be like, oh, this kind of represents like the proton, the electron, the neutron. But I don't really think that's not like why I came up with it. But I think if you want to interpret it that way, that's cool. But in my head, I really liked the idea of him having just a single Porygon in the Slowpoke well. But then I also really thought, Electabuzz and Magmar, for some reason in my head, fit him well. So I kind of put those ideas together. No one else in all of Johto has a Porygon 2. At least no major trainers have Porygon 2. So I think this works. Now, granted, this doesn't really solve the issue that I had with him using Golbat because all of these fixes will be assumed to exist in the reality of my other videos where I fix gym leaders, elite four members, etc. And in my rivals analysis video, I decided that I would give Silver and Electabuzz. So you would fight Electabuzz twice, but at least the other two Pokemon aren't repeats of Pokemon that you had just fought, unlike his Golbat, which is on Silver's team, and then Weezing, who was just on Petrol's team. So there's at least is more variety to it. Plus, I just think this lineup fits his personality and character a lot better. Now, Ariana, honestly, this is a great team. Arbok, Vileplume, Murkrow, especially since in the Elite Four fix video, I changed Karen's team significantly to no longer have a Vileplume, so her team is not just most of Karen's team. Um, I can maybe see an argument for getting rid of Arbok because it is used majorly by other Team Rocket members, but I don't really see it as that big of a deal necessarily. There weren't really any other poison types in Generation 2 that I thought really fit her well. Um, and I just feel like Arbok does fit the vibe she's going for. The only really change, the only real change that I thought to do was give her a Stantler. Stantler is one of those that isn't really anywhere else. Um, I wanted her to have four Pokemon, but I don't think adding a Stantler would put her over the top to be overpowered for that point in the game. Plus, she is a white executive on kind of like not the same tier as Archer, but at least on a step up from Petrol and Proton. So her having four Pokemon, I think makes sense. And then lastly, Archer. His team annoys me almost as much as Proton's because his entire team is repeats. He has coughing, which he already fought five of those, and then two wheezing. So this is the what is that, eighth? This is the eighth Pokemon in the coughing line just within the executives. And then Houndour and Houndoom. Was there really no other Pokemon? Like you couldn't do Growlithe? There were no other Pokemon you could have thought to give him? That seems weird. So yeah, this is bad. I fully okay with him using Houndoom, especially similar to Ariana. I fixed Karen's team to have her ace now be Tyranitar, so she wouldn't be sharing an ace with Archer. So I'm fine with him having an Archer, with him having Houndoom, since I feel it is a very strong Pokemon for this point in the game. I wish the other two Pokemon on his team were different. So I'm going with Primeape, Granbull, and again, two Pokemon that were used nowhere else in the entire game, really, to my knowledge, especially um, given the change I made where I switched out Chuck to now be a ground gym leader. He no longer uses Primeape. But even if he did, Primeape is still not one that's used a lot, so I think that's fine. Um, Gramble, another normal type that isn't really used anywhere else, and also kind of fits his theme of being like the attack dog of uh of Team Rocket. Doug Trio, since he's a massive Giovanni fanboy, I think it'll be fun if he had at least one ground type on his team. Um, and this could kind of imply that he searched all over Johto and Kanto to try to find him, since Diglett isn't actually available in any of the Johto roots or caves or whatever, but it is still found in the Diglett's Tunnel back in Kanto. So even though it's not available in Johto, he still went there, scoured the entire region trying to find one and or trying to find a Giovanni and caught a Doug Trio along the way. And he can keep Houndoom. And lastly, the big boss of Team Rocket, Giovanni. Now, this is just his gym battle team from Yellow, and I don't really see a need to change this. I was a little wishy-washy when I made my gym leaders video about what I wanted his official gym battle team to be. At the time, I wasn't really sure if I wanted Persian to be on there. I was like, maybe you could do Sandslash or Marowak, but I've nailed down, yes, I do like him having Persian here. His yellow team is honestly yes, it's not all ground types, but it's thematic to the character, and I'm very okay with that. Okay, moving on to Team Aqua. Okay, I have a lot of issues with Team Aqua. Here's a fun fact about Team Aqua. Across every game Team Aqua, like the full Team Aqua is available in Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, and then Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Across all of those games, you want to guess how many water type Pokemon every single grunt admin, boss, all of them, how many water types they use throughout the entire time? Two. The only two water types that Team Aqua in its entirety ever uses are Carvana and Sharpedo. The two Pokemon that are in the same evolutionary line. I I counted. If you do not include legendary Pokemon, starter Pokemon, or useless water types like Surskit and Feebas, there are 39 viable water types they could have pulled from. 39. To put that number into perspective, that means you could theoretically fight six Team Aqua grunts in a row, all full teams of six water types, and you wouldn't have to repeat any water type Pokemon and have three left over. But instead, every single Team Aqua grunt has someone in the Carvana line, someone in the Poochyena line, someone in the Zubat line. Those are the only three lines of Pokemon the entire the entirety of Team Aqua uses. At least in the original games, in Omega Ruby FS Sapphire, they technically kind of fixed that conundrum and added the Grimer line. So at least it's something, but now you're up to four with still only one line of water types. And just to rub salt in the wound, across all of Team Aqua in Generation 3, not a single water type attack is used by anybody. Archer didn't teach his Sharpedo Surf or Waterfall or Dive, and because you can't because Sharpedo doesn't learn any water type moves by level up, the only way you could have them learn any water moves is by TM or HM. So because of that, no water type attacks throughout the entire region of Generation 3, at least for Team Aqua. So if you picked Combuskin, even though theoretically you should be at a disadvantage, you're not. You're perfectly fine just to continue attacking into every single Pokemon on their team completely safe because they're never going to attack you super effectively. So all that to say, the teams that I'm going to be analyzing for Team Aqua, I'm going to be very disappointed in. So one more little thing about Team Aqua and Magma. The character model I picked will always be from the remix, just because I think those designs are a lot better, and the original designs don't really have artwork that I could really pull from and look good here. So just know that this is Shelly's best team from Emerald. It's a single Sharpedo and a single Mightyena. And The reason I didn't pick her team from Alpha Sapphire is because her Alpha Sapphire team had a single Sharpedo. Not only did they not fix the idea of Team Aqua members not using enough water types, they they made the admins not they made the admins use even fewer Pokemon, period. So she actually lost a Pokemon. I don't know why, but that's what they did. So so my first major fix would be just give her three good, strong water types that aren't Sharpedo. Those being Gorbis, Seadra, Crawdont. This will be her fight in Sapphire down in the seafloor cavern. I think this is a solid three Pokemon team for that point in the game. It's not strong enough to overshadow Archie. Yeah, Archie. Sorry, not strong enough to overpower Archie, but it is still very strong in its own right. Plus, I like her having a water dark type uh, as her ace, kind of mirror Sharpedo without actually being a Sharpedo. Moving on to Matt, he has a single Carvana, Mightyena, and Sharpedo. It's you couldn't give him a Whalmer, you couldn't give him Corphish, you couldn't give him Sea King or Whiscash or Celio or any other water type, Starmie, anything, Tentacruel, and like I could keep going. Like I said, there were 39 other water types you could pull from, but no, Carvana, Sharpedo. It's so good. But hey, at least in Alpha Sapphire, they gave him a Mega Sharpedo in his final fight. So that a single Mega Sharpedo. So good. So good. Anyway, so this is his team that he should have had. Huntail, Wailmer, Celio. Now do keep in mind that this team exists in the Gen 3 that I created where um Glacia is no longer the Ice Elite Four member. I switched that out for I switched some things around so Glacia, since there were only two Ice Pokemon available, I just decided to switch her out and distribute the Walrein line and the Glalie line elsewhere. So I put the Celio here. And I think Wilmer and Celio honestly kind of fit Matt from Ruby and Sapphire, his vibe a little better. But like I said, I couldn't really find a good sprite or a good artwork for that. But he was a little bigger, his belly was a little bigger in those games, so I think Whalmer and Celio would fit that design better. But I think this Matt could still rock a Whalmer and or Walrein, eventually. So and plus Huntail to kind of mirror Shelly's Gorbis. And I think this is a solid team where you would fight him when he's guarding the submarine in the Team Aqua hideout. I think this would be a solid team for that point in the game. And then lastly, Archie. Now, as mentioned, they did at least add the Grimer line. They make that available, but it didn't help the overall issue of him only having one water type. Um, so like he it at least makes him better to have four Pokemon because in Ruby in Sapphire and Emerald, Mightyena, Crobat, and Sharpedo was just never that challenging. So at least the four Pokemon team is at least a little better, along with a Mega. Not that Mega Sharpedo is that great, but it's still something. So yeah, it's I don't know. I decided instead of Muck, I would switch that out for a Tentacruel, another water type that I think fits his vibe very well. Um, and I just feel like I'm okay with him having more poison types, but it should be a water poison type if available, and one is available, so he should have Tentacruel. I originally kind of wanted, like, was maybe thinking about giving Tentacruel to one of the other admins, but I think it fits his team very well. On to Team Magma, who I take less issue with their team distribution because there's not that many fire types available, so it's not as glaringly obvious of an issue that they don't use that many fire types. And at least in Emerald, they kind of technically remedied the issue where they gave exactly, I think it's only one grunt. Um, there was a single grunt in like the Mount Chimney, yeah, the Mount Chimney volcano area while on your way to Groudon. There's exactly one that has Ball Toy, which is another ground type, and I wish they had extrapolated that into giving them a bunch of other fire and ground type Pokemon. But alas, just the single Ball Toy. So moving on to the admins. For this one specifically, I did bite the bullet and gave I made Tabitha be the sprite from the original games. Because he usually in Omega Ruby looks like this, and I do not like this design at all. I don't know what he's doing with his hands. I don't like his design. It's just his boots are weird. Just I don't like him. But this at least looks better. Design wise, I do kind of think that the admins of Aqua are significantly better than the admins for Team Magma, even with their updated designs. But especially in the original, Tabitha and Courtney essentially visually looked near identical to the grunts, like the male and female grunt, just in a different pose. Whereas Shelly and Matt look way different from the Aqua grunts. But even in the remakes, Shelly and Matt and even Archie look so much better than the original and even a lot better than their redesigns here. But regardless, he at least has a more full team with one Nummel, Mightyena, Zubat, and Camerupt. So at least it's like slightly better, but it's still just the three Pokemon lines. Instead of Carvana from Aqua, it's Numel here instead. So it's really the same issue going on. And then, like I said before, with Team Aqua, for Team Magma, they, for some reason, gave all the admins a single camera. I don't know why. I don't know why they regressed to the point where, like, if all the admins have the ace of the team leader, it just feels awkward when you get to the leader and he just has, like by the time you get to Maxi, Camera Up's not going to feel special anymore. It's not going to feel like Maxi's Pokemon anymore. But whatever. So I decided to go along with the ball toy idea and make one of the admins a ground specialist and the other a fire specialist. And I decided to go with Tabitha being the ground specialist. There aren't that many ground types in Engine 3 as well. I think honestly I want to say combined, um, if you take all of the ground and fire types together, it's not even close to the amount of Pokemon available that there are water types, but there's at least enough to make some pretty solid teams here. So Rhyhorn, Sandslash, Claydol. The only other real ground types available that were in Gen 3 are Flygon and Whiscash, and those go other places. It would be weird if a guy on Team Magma's team had a Whiscash, but I think this is pretty solid enough. And lastly, for the Magma Grunt, we have Courtney. I don't know. Again, just camera up to Mightyena. Which fun fact about Courtney? She is inexplicably absent from Pokemon Emerald. Every place in the original Ruby that you would fight Courtney, that is where a Team Aqua admin was. And then in every major plot point where you encounter Team Magma, Tabitha is the only admin you fight on the mountain, like on top of Mount Chimney, in Mount Chimney, and then in the Moss Deep Space Center. All three of those fights are with are Tabitha. So Courtney just got no chance to even try to improve in that game. Not that I think they would, given how they treat Shelly and Matt. But regardless, um, she just, in her best fight, she had a camera up to Diana, and then in Omega Ruby, they gave her a single Mega camera up. So my fix would be just like I did with Tabitha making a ground specialist. I'm going to make Courtney a fire specialist. And once again, there aren't that many fire types to pull from. Outside of these three, Blaziken and Camerupt, the only other fire type possible in Generation 3 is Sunny Form, Cast Form. And that's not something that we're gonna work with here. So but it would be fine for her to have Torkoal because the one time you would the times that you would fight her having a Torkoal would be well after you've already fought Flannery. So it's not like you're taking Torkoal from her. It's not like you already see a bunch of Torkoal before you get to Flannery. So yeah, I think Ninetales, Mycargo, and Torkoal is yes, she technically does have more fully evolved Pokemon than Matt does, or even Shelly, but Matt Cargo and Torkoal, especially at that point in the game, they're not really gonna pose that big of a threat. Torkoal has too many weaknesses, or Matt Cargo has too many weaknesses. Torkoal isn't that strong offensively, and Ninetales, yeah, it's kind of bulky on the special offensive side, but it doesn't have high enough special attack to really be able to capitalize on it. So there you go. Lastly, with Maxi, uh, similar to the Grimer line in Oros with Team Aqua, they gave some members of Team Magma in Omega Ruby Pokemon in the coughing line. Um, like I guess Grimer is like oozy like water, and Wheezing is more solid like earth. I don't know. But how considering there are already so many other Pokemon in the coughing line on Team Rocket, I've decided to switch out Weezing for a Golem. A very solid, pun intended, solid ground type for him to have. I originally considered doing Rhydon here and giving Graveler to Tabitha, but then that would be definitely aping off of Giovanni. So I think Golem here fits very well. So yeah, that at least kind of fix them. It's not perfect. Ideally, there will be more fire types and honestly ground types to work with, but I don't mind him not having a team full of fire types, but at least having two Pokemon of their individual type specialties feels like how they should have done it. Moving on to Team Galactic. Now, overall, I'm actually very happy with how Team Galactic shaped out. Both Mars and Jupiter, I don't really have an issue with either of their teams, especially since the teams that's showing here are intended to be fought together in double battle at the top of Spirit Pillar. So them both having Bronzor, Golbat, and then their aces at the back, I think that flows very naturally. Maybe if there was some post-game fight with them, they could each have a fourth Pokemon that does differentiate them. But as far as main story fights, this is this is pretty good. Saturn, I so this is actually his Diamond and Pearl team. In Platinum, he had a very similar situation to Jupiter and Mars where he had Bronzor, Golbat, and then Toxicroak, but in Diamond and Pearl, he had Kadabra instead. And I like that he is kind of on a tier above Mars and uh Mars and Jupiter. So I don't mind him having, some extra variety. But I personally feel like something like a Gengar fits his personality better, is just kind of puts it up in the tier above. It doesn't overshadow Cyrus, who you fight just before you fight this team. Um, like I originally considered maybe getting rid of Bronzor and doing like keeping Kadabra, but I like the idea of all of them having Bronzor. Um, but yeah, it's also a little weird how in Diamond and Pearl, you fight this team in the Lake Verity, one of the whichever lake he's in, Valor maybe. And then when you fight him again right after Cyrus, he just has this team again. So I think doing this where the first time you fight him, it's Bronzor, Ghastly, or not, well, Haunter. Bronzor, Haunter, Toxicroak. Then the next time, Bronzor, Gengar, Toxicroak. And it's finally he has Gengar because in my gym leader fix video, I switched out Fantina's Gengar for a Dusclops, who then could eventually become a Dusknoir. So Gengar is up for grabs. Next up, Karan. I'm gonna say Karan. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but I'm gonna say Karan. Um, he's a very interesting character. In Platinum, he is the scientist that is kind of working in the background of a couple of scenes. He doesn't really do anything. The events of Platinum happen exactly the same as they did in Diamond and Pearl. So up to a point. So I don't not really sure what he specifically contributed. But I do like the idea of him being here. I like the idea of in the post game of Platinum, once you go up Stark Mountain, you find out that Team Galactic is trying to, I guess they're trying to call for Heatran, I guess. It's like one last ditch effort to find another strong Pokemon. So you then fight off Jupiter and Mars again, and then after that, Charon just kind of leaves. I think it'll be fun if after you beat both of them, you then fight Charon. He's just been this like, silent observer throughout the entire game, but now it's his time to shine. So even though he didn't have a team originally, I think he should have a very good, essentially like a second final boss of Team Galactic type team. And we're just gonna call him Pluto. All the others have planet names. Charon is Pluto's moon, and Pluto is his Japanese name. I don't know why they changed it to Charon. So we're calling him Pluto now. Yeah. Um, so he's keeping his bronzong. Since every other admin has Bronzor, he should also have Bronzong. And then all the other Pokemon should either be like sciencey or space themed, which Magnezone, who kind of looks like a UFO, Clefable, some other Team Galactic grunts have Clefairy, so I think it'd be fun if he had Clefable, and Alakazam, and Porygon Z, since to my knowledge, no other major trainer uses the Porygon Z, and I think it makes sense for the scientists to, if not have created Porygon Z, at least figured out how to use one. So there you go. Lastly, Cyrus. His platinum team is actually really, really good. I like it a lot. It is a very challenging team. Um, it's honestly like maybe even like too strong to the point where if you go through the entire distortion world to get to him and you can't beat him, then you have to leave the distortion world, go through that entire tedious process, train up, and then come back in, and then try to fight him again. So hopefully you're well prepared before going in. But there is a slight issue where all of his Pokemon are weak to rock. So if you have any strong rock Pokemon, it can just completely devastate his entire team. Um, and then kind of two other minor issues. One is really a nitpick just because time has passed since his team was was here, and a lot of his Pokemon, in fact, technically every single one of his Pokemon either was at the time or now is repeats of other major trainers on villain teams. Obviously, Houndour was Archer's ace. Honchkrow was used on Lysanders. Crobat was used on Archie and Maxie. Gyarados was also used on Lysander. And Weavile is on Zinzala's team over in Black and White 2. It's not his fault, but since I do have the the advantage of hindsight. Um, and I am essentially constructing this as if I have been making them the entire way through, so I can, you know, so I can essentially make them as perfect as I can. I'm going to be doing some switching around to, here and also moving forward so that this team stays more unique. Another kind of minor issue I have with this team is in Platinum specifically, the first two times you fight him, Murkrow and then Honchkrow is his strongest Pokemon, and then randomly the last time is Weavile. And down in Pearl, Sneasel is the strongest, and then obviously Weavile becomes the strongest. And I've always kind of felt that Honchkrow should have been his strongest. Not only do I think it just fits his vibe as like the boss of Team Galactic better, it also frees up Weavile to not feel weird to be on Candace's rematch team, whereas there's not really another flying or dark specialist in Sinnoh that would that could overlap with Honchkrow. So all that to say, my fix would be Bronzong because I like the idea of every major trainer on Team Galactic having someone in the Bronzor line. Crobat, Absol to kind of fill the same void that Houndoom does, where it's a dark type in the Platinum Pokedex from a previous generation, and they both can Mega Evolve, so that isn't useful right now, but put a pin in that. Um, and then Weavile and Honchkrow as his ace, with Weavile being like a secondary ace. So yeah, I think this team just has a little more personality. It's maybe technically not as strong just because Gyarados is ridiculously strong. Um, and like Houndoom does give some good coverage, but with Bronzong being here, his entire team is no longer weak to flying, or is no longer weak to rock. And then Absol, same with Honchkrow, has the super luck ability, so it can still be strong if you let it set up on you. Moving on to Team Plasma. Now, for Team Plasma, I was originally going to include in along with this, but I've already talked about him two other times, both in the Champions video and Rivals video. So if you want to hear my thoughts on his teams, go watch those videos and instead then come back here. But Getsis, I also did talk about briefly in that Champions video, but because he is the boss of the team, I felt like I didn't need to talk about him here. Um, it's a solid team in a vacuum, is actually a great team in a vacuum. However, I'm a little annoyed that both Cofagrigus, Bisharp, and Bouffalant are all repeats of other significant trainers in the Elite Four. Obviously, Cofagrigus is on Chantal's team. Bisharp is Grimsley's ace of those games. And then Bouffalant is also on Alder's team, who I know you hadn't fought yet, but you would eventually fight him as a champion of the Elite Four. So I personally would switch out Bouffalant and Bisharp for Garbodor and Ferrothorn. Cofagrigus can stay. I for some reason like it for some reason my head fits him well. Plus, I'm okay with repeats if they can do something significantly different. I'm pretty sure Chantal's knows Will-O-Wisp and is just an attacker otherwise, whereas his Cofagrigus is a toxic stalling one with toxic and protect and just annoys you to death. So because it can do something so different, I like it here. I think Garbodor and Ferrothorn are two Pokemon that aren't really used anywhere else in Black and White, so I like them here. Now moving on to Black and White 2, Colress. Um, Narratively, he fits like a kind of similar vibe to Pluto, but he had a much more active role in the story. Um, so his team like is kind of similar, but has a lot of psychic and steel types. I like the idea of the Eviolite Magneton, both Magneton and Magneton Zone, both having sturdy, so they can hit very hard and cannot die in one hit. So that's good. However, if I were making this team, I would keep the Eviolite Magneton and get rid of the Magnezone instead for a Probopass. I don't like Probopass as a Pokemon, but I think it still fits the vibe he's going for. And then like maybe in a rematch, it can then evolve into a Magnezone. But as far as just, the initial fight, or I guess not the initial one, like the final fight or the main story, I like the variety of the Eviolite Magneton. Now, Zenzalin, one of the seven sages, just kind of stuck around. He's an ice specialist, and this guy is very funny because you fight this team, I believe, three different times in the span of like 20 in-game minutes. It's very weird. Like um, once Team Plasma starts attacking and stuff, he just shows up a lot, and you fight him a lot. Um, so having two Cryogonal just feels very repetitive, even just once it feels repetitive, but then two additional times, it's very repetitive and kind of annoying. So I decided to give him another mean ice type in the Black and White 2 Pokedex, Cloyster, Weavile, and then Cryogonal as his ace. Not that I think his ace like matters as much since like I don't know, I feel like him his role in Team Plasma isn't like the same as like admins of other teams are, but especially since Cyrus's ace at least was Weavile, it's still very weird that Zenzalin had a Weavile as his, if not his ace. Might all be in the same level, but even like it being like the de facto ace since it's the last Pokemon he sends out. But yeah, I think this is just an overall more solid team. And then lastly, Gets This from Black and White 2. This is a very good team. I like the addition of the two poison types. That's kind of what made me think to give him Garbodor in the first place. However, two little things with this. One, uh, I specifically switched Marlin's ace in my gym leader video. I switched that for him to now use Seismitoad as his ace. So because of that, I would want him to not have Seismitoad. And I don't know, it would I feel like they only gave him Toxicroak because it's a poison type and also, I don't know, just to kind of mirror the other frog that he has. So I decided to bring back Ferrothorn and Garbodor and then switch out Seismitoad for Drapion. It's essentially his original team with Drapion instead of Seismitoad. Moving on to Team Flare. Team Flare was an interesting case because there are technically four different named scientist admin type characters. However, all of them only have two Pokemon. One of them may have had three, but most of them only have two Pokemon, and their teams are just kind of there. Like there doesn't really seem to be any theming to it. There don't really seem to be much theming to the entire team as a whole. Like obviously Aqua and Magma have a lot of water, water and fire types and ground types in theory. Um, Team Rocket used a bunch of poison types, but also a couple of other things that kind of felt, you know, evil adjacent. Um, and Team Galactic had like I don't know, I don't really know exactly what their theming was, but at least because some of them used like Wurmple for some reason, but then they had a bunch of other Pokemon that kind of fit the similar vibe of like evil Pokemon. Whereas Team Flare, they just kind of use stuff. There doesn't really seem to be much rhyme or reason to anything that any given grunt uses. So I didn't really want to touch any of those admins. I just didn't care enough to really worry about that. So all I'm going to be doing is talking about Malva, who specifically really should have been been more involved with the story. The fact that she was a part of Team Flare just comes out of nowhere right before you battle the Elite Four. So I'm gonna make her more of an active part of the story. And then the leader Lysander. So Malva, this is the one time you fight her. Uh Pyro, Torkoal, Chandelure, Talonflame. I already ripped into this entire Elite Four back in my Elite Four video where it's a absolute travesty that this Elite Four is the strongest Elite Four I've ever been, but they all only have four Pokemon and no Mega Evolutions. That is bad. Just straight up bad. So her Elite Four team is Pyroar, Heatmor, Chandelure, Mega Houndoom, and Talonflame. Now, I do kind of feel like you should fight her one additional time during the events of the story. Maybe you don't even realize it's her, or maybe it is her, but like when you get to the Elite Four, it's it's even bigger deal that she is in in the squad. Um, and maybe in that fight she has Heatmor, Houndour, or Talonflame, or something of that nature. Where then when you get here, it's just a more expanded version of that team. I'm not married to the idea of you fighting her before the Elite Four, but regardless, this is a vastly improved Elite Four member team. And Lysander, like I said, there doesn't really seem to be much rhyme or reason to how this team came together. Like Mienshao seems kind of random here. Honchkrow is here for the same reason that it was on Cyrus's team, and I feel like it fits Cyrus's vibe better. Pyroar, obviously, he looks like a Pyroar. And then Mega Gyarados, I'm very fine with that. But because I made Honchkrow the ace of Cyrus's team, because I don't really like Mienshao here, I'm gonna get rid of both of those, and also I'm gonna give him a team of five. Um, it was kind of my goal throughout this entire process to give every like boss level character at least four Pokemon, ideally five if it made sense. So because Lysander's his ace, I think, is like 55 or 56. Like it got up there because it's, if not the strongest, one of the strongest final bosses of a team. I'm gonna give him five Pokemon. Now this one is completely vibes based. There is kind of similar to the me and Shao. There wasn't like any hard reasoning for the picks I made. I looked at the entire decks, I looked at things that weren't really used all that much, and like these kind of fit. So in my head, I had always just like from memory, I had thought that Magnetric was on his team. And then when I found out it's not, I was confused. But Magnetric was on one of the like scientist admin people's teams. So I guess that's where I got confused. So I'm taking it off of that person's team and giving it here. Magnetric, Machamp, again, no real reasoning. I just completely vibes wise. I just for some reason feel like he would have one. Same with Gliscor. It fits a similar vibe that Honchkrow and Crobat kind of do, like a evil bat thing. I don't know. Um, and then Pyroar, and you keep the Mega Gyarados. Again, it's not perfect. I could easily hear arguments against it, but that's kind of what I landed on. And next up, Team Skull. Plumeria, um, I feel like I feel like you just simply don't fight her enough in the main story in order for her to become interesting. I like her design a lot, I like her personality, but I think you can only fight her twice, and this is the last team in the main story. There is a post-game fight. I think she participates in the title defense where she has a full team, and I like that. However, here I don't really like this team. She's obviously a poison specialist, but one of her Pokemon, Golbat, just like with Proton way back, Golbat is also on Gladion's team. And Gladion, he's like kind of associated with Team Skull. I didn't really want to talk about him again since I went pretty in depth on into his teams in the Rivals video. But you still fight Golbat several times, even if he's not directly involved with Team Skull, you still fight Golbat, so these people in the Golbat line several times, kind of, around the time you would fight her. So I don't love that, especially since there are several other poison types in Alola that you could have pulled from. So yeah, that's not ideal. Salazzle is great. It fits her very well. Um, so I think you should fight her at least another time at some point. I don't really know where. It's been a while since I played any of the Sun and Moon games, so I don't know exactly when you would have another opportunity to fight her during the main story, but I do think you should fight her a third time, and her team should be Alolan Muck, Toxapex, Salazzle. And then you can scale down from there. Like the first time, it's just Grimer and Mareanie. Yeah, I think this just makes more sense. These are also two Pokemon that were added to her post game team, so I think she should just have those the whole time. Next up, Guzma. Um, this team's amazing. I really like the idea of a team boss having a bunch of bug types. In Sun and Moon, he had an Ariados instead of Pinsir, but I like Pinsir more in Ultra Sun and Moon. Like, and especially since he's not like the true villain of Sun and Moon, it's fine that he only has four Pokemon. So yeah, I really like this a lot. I don't really see a need to fix or change anything. He does have a post-game fight where he adds a Scizor to his team. That's great. So I don't really see a need to fix this. Like maybe he should always use Scizor or Scyther, but you know, this is good. So I don't really see a need to fix it. We're just gonna move right on to the Ether Foundation. So starting off with Faba, I believe I could be mistaken. I believe you fight this team in the lead up to the Team Rainbow Rocket event thing. Um, because I know in Sun and Moon he for some reason joins the title defense. So this is the team that you would fight there, and I'm pretty sure this is the team that he would have in the like post game story of Ultra Sun and Moon. But I am going to be counting that here. So yeah, I dig this team. I love the like weird scientist vibe he's going for. M- Maybe you make Bruxish his ace, but I also think Hypno just fits his design and vibe very well. Um, like maybe you could argue he should have a Rangaroo instead of Alakazam or Claydol or something, but I did give a Rangaroo to Hal in Ultra Sun and Moon for his champion fight. So I don't really think that's necessary. However, because Alolan Raichu is also on Hal's team, in fact, is like kind of Hal's de facto ace, at least his like secondary ace. The only change I would do here is switch out Raichu for Oricorio. Um, I kind of wish all the different Oricorio forms were used at some point throughout the game because the fire one is on the flying Elite Four members team. Um, I kind of wish the Acerola used the ghost one, and the electric one I guess that would be on Sophocles' team. They feel like a staple within the region. Like I think it'd be kind of cool if all of them, kind of like how I did with the evolutions in Sinnoh, where where for those gym leaders, I tried to give everybody, or throughout the gym leader and champion videos, I tried to give as many people um, evolutions as possible. I just like the idea of all four of those Oricorios being somewhere, and I think they fit here. And lastly, for this team, we have Lusamine. I likeLusamine's the vibe they went for a lot, how it's like a bunch of elegant, pretty Pokemon because like, that is the only thing she values. She essentially, tr- you know, treats Lily like this perfect little play doll for herself, and she basically casted out Gladion because he wasn't perfect. And I like this a lot. Beware, just like it kind of feels like weirdly out of place, but also fits her vibe weirdly well, kind of like, almost like how she kind of smothered Lily growing up, beware, bear hugs you. Um, Similar to Cyrus, this team is good. However, I'm gonna be taking out Milotic and putting in something else because um Oleana, who shows up with the during the Macrocosmos storyline, her team has a very similar vibe to this one, where it's a bunch of like very pretty feminine Pokemon, and Milotic shows up there as well. And I think it fits her vibe a little better than here. Um, so I'm switching out Milotic and putting in the Lopunny that she has in Ultra Sun and Moon. In that game, she has Lopunny instead of Mismagius. So I'm just, essentially combining her Sun and Moon and then Ultra Sun and Moon team. And then also adding Nihilego. If Sun and Moon were released one generation later, I guarantee you that the final Pokemon that you would fight on her team would be a fight against her. In Sun and Moon, you go into the ultra warm like ultra space, you go to like the Nihilego realm, and she fuses with one somehow, and that like powers up all of her other Pokemon. All of them gain some kind of stat boost. But then after you defeat her Beware, she just gives up. She just unfuses and then gives up. Even though there are Nihilego everywhere, it's just a very common Pokemon in this dimension. She doesn't use one on her team in any capacity. And like I was so ready to fight her, just like in Sun and Moon, where there were the raid battles, where there was the Eternamax Eternatus, all the different raid fights, raid type things in Scarlet and Violet. Like if it were one generation later or after Gen 8, I guarantee the final fight would have been against her in some kind of like big, raid boss type event. Maybe Lily and Ledyon can also be there to like, help you fight them. But no, instead you don't fight her with a Nihilego at all. You just beat her Beware and she gives up. So either you fight her or she at least has a Nihilego on her team. Ideally, when, 20 years from now, when they eventually do remake Gen 7, I really, really hope they end up doing that. I just think I just think that would really tie together this that entire story, the entire generation very nicely. Um, that's honestly like my biggest complaint with at least the story part of Sun and Moon, is that climax felt a little underwhelming because you don't really get that like satisfying climax of fighting her. Okay, moving on to Metrocosmos. Now I am skipping Team Yell. They don't count. The only admin level characters in Team Yell are Marnie, who doesn't even want to be on the team. They don't really want them to exist. And then Piers, who I already talked about in the gym leaders video. And like he's only the like leader of the team basically until you fight him for the first time as a gym leader, and then Team Yell disbands, I think. So that doesn't count. Team Yell shouldn't have existed. Like, I don't know. Like, I get that you need some arbitrary thing to railroad the player to not go certain places at certain times, but I don't know, be more creative than just having two idiots blowing horns and yelling so that even though you then later beat those people in a fight and then you pass, just whatever. Not that Macrocosmos is much better. Chairman Rose, even though he was super sketchy the entire game, he just seemingly comes out of nowhere and is like, "Oh, I'm starting the darkest day. Get ready for it." And then it just happens. Like the story would have been unchanged completely if right before you fight Leon, Eternatus just shows up and then you have to fight it. Like the story would have gone exactly the same way if Chairman Rose was just a normal guy. Um, but regardless, he is a major player in the story technically. So we got to talk about this evil organization with Oleana. Like I said, with Lusamine, she has a very similar vibe to her, where she has a bunch of Pokemon that are like pretty and feminine. And like I said, I like Milotic here better because she has the Fire, Grass, Water core, and then Frostlass, and then G-Max Garbodor is very funny because she's clearly a very toxic person. So I dig that a lot. So much so that I don't really see a reason to change anything here. Like maybe you wanted to add a sixth Pokemon on here, but I don't really see a need for that. This is a very solid mini boss before you then go on to fight the leader being Chairman Rose. Um, this is a solid steel team. There isn't at the time of Sword and Shield in the main story, there wasn't any other steel specialists, so this works. However, in the post-game fights with Sorbert and Shieldbert, not that I think they would exist in my perfect reality, but whatever. And then also Peony in the Crown Tundra. There is a little bit of overlap with his teams, on with his team and those as well. So again, with the advent of hindsight, I am going to be switching some stuff around because I gave Peony, I believe I gave him Ferrothorn and Berserker. And then I believe his Cavaliers on Sorbird's team. Not again, not that that matters. I wouldn't really put him in here, but but the point still stands that um, these his team could use a tune-up because things could be distributed other places. So because Peony is a dedicated steel specialist, and because there isn't a dedicated electric specialist in Galar, I thought it'd be fun since he is the leader of an energy corporation. I thought it'd be fun if he were a steel and electric specialist. So I gave him Galarian Stunfisk, which I think is fun because one of the first times you encounter um Bede is Bede, whatever how you say his name. You find him in one of the Galar mines where Galarian Stunfisk are. So I would like that connection there. Vikavolt and Heliolisk, I think are two electric types that are very strong and they aren't really used anywhere else in the region. You can keep Kling Klang and Copperajah. I also think this is fun because um yes, he's no longer like a full steel type trainer, but on paper, all of them are actually still technically weak to fire because Heliolisk has the dry skin ability. So you still can run through him with a strong fire type move. So I don't know, I still kind of like that synergy going on there. Um, I could easily hear arguments either for switching out someone for Galarian Stunfisk because Stunfisk is not that strong, but since no one else uses it, I wanted to highlight it somewhere. I could hear arguments for him having a sixth Pokemon, like one other electric type to give him three of each. I could even hear an argument for something like a Rotom. It still feels a little weird for random trainers. I know he's not random; he was the final boss of the game more or less. But like it's I don't know. Even though Rotom is more ubiquitous, it's in literally every Pokedex. Everyone just has one on them. It still just feels a little weird for trainers like this to have Rotom, but I could hear an argument for putting Rotom here. So yeah, it's not like an improvement strength wise, but I think lore wise, this fits him very well. Moving on to the last team here, Team Star. So for all of these Team Star members, assume that they have like their team and then also the Team Starmobile. The program I was using didn't have any of the Starmobile sprites available, so just assume that that's a constant, whatever type they are. That's what's here as well. But regardless, I'm going to be analyzing the team that they used prior to the Starmobile, because I feel like that is still very important. And him just having a single Pawniard, I don't know. Like I know that it eventually evolves into a Gen 9 Pokemon, but one Pawniard is not that impressive at all. Ideally, he would have at least two Pokemon because you're not supposed to fight him, I think, until yeah, he's on level 20, I think. So you're not supposed to fight him until after the second gym. And every gym leader in this game has at least three Pokemon. So I think he should have at least two Pokemon and then also the Team Stormobile. I don't think a Mass Shift would break the game. Um, I could even hear an argument for him having something that's slightly stronger as one of these two. But regardless, these two and then the Team Starmobile, I don't think I don't think anyone would get just walled off by this team. It's a good first, first like admin type character team. Next up, Mela. For similar reason to to Giacomo, her having a single Pokemon is a little underwhelming. It is fun that it can set up the sun for the Team Starmobile later to wreak havoc, but she should have at least two Pokemon. You don't fight her until after the third gym, and I think after the second Titan trial. So she should have Torkoal and then Charcadet. I could even hear an argument for at that point in the game, Armarouge would be just fine here. It is a little strong. I think it's like 510 base stat total, but she, you are fighting her after the third gym. And in a lot of other Pokemon games, the fourth gym leader can get pretty strong. So even in Gen 2, Starmie had like over has well over 500 base stat total. So I think it will be fair, at least Charcadet, maybe even Armor Rouge, but someone in the Charcadet line should go here along with Torkoal. And then again, also the Team Starmobile. Next up, Atticus. I really like his design. However, it's very weird that he does not use Grafaiai. I like that he has Rev-a-Room and then the Team Starmobile after it, which is like kind of technically a modified Rev-a-Room. Like that he gets to, basically use this thing twice. But no Grafaiai is very weird. Like it was one of the main Pokemon they used to advertise Scarlet and Violet. It's a poison normal type that isn't used anywhere else in the region. As far as I can tell, is on no other major trainers team. So I feel like the poison specialist should use it. So that's the main change I'll do here. Switch out Muck just to have the more type variety. Ortega, solid team. I do feel like you could get away with the fourth Pokemon since uh it's, at least in the main game, you fight Ortega and then the last one, Airy, after the eighth gym leader. I personally would do Ortega right before the eighth gym leader, like maybe around the like 45, 46 at the highest. And then or you have him move 48 and then have Grusha be like 50, 52, and then Airy can be stronger than that. But regardless, whether it's after the seventh or eighth gym, Ortega could easily have four Pokemon plus a Team Starmobile. So I'm going to add a Dedenne just to add another type there. Um, if you maybe would be a little concerned about strength, Dedenne is not going to break the game. And lastly, Airy. This is a very good team. All of these are very strong, pretty fast fighting type Pokemon. Um, so this is one of those where I don't really think you need to change just for personal preference. I personally like Breloom better than Passimian. Um, like it's not a huge deal if she like which she used, but kind of similar to the muck into Grafai I picked from before. Uh, Passimi is the only one here that doesn't have a dual typing, so I think it'd be cool if she had another fighting type that had another type. And then lastly, Penny. I talked about her briefly in the Rivals video. This is a solid team of evolutions. It'd be kind of tricky to say if they should have switched out any of these for anyone else because every single evolution is someone's favorite evolution, and fans of evolutions are very passionate about their favorite evolution. I've seen some people complain that Glaceon isn't here. Some people complain that Espeon isn't there. So like, but I don't really think you could. I don't really think you could do better than this. Like Espeon's been used a lot of other places. Um, I feel like over time, Glaceon's gotten more love than Leafeon has. So I think this is good enough. Uh, so so yeah, I did kind of lie. There is actually one other villain team that we do need to talk about. And technically they shouldn't have gone last, but I wanted to save them for last just because I like them so much. Team Rainbow Rocket. First, I just want to say I appreciate this art so much. Like I like the team they created for Elio here. I like this team so much. I originally wanted to base the protagonist team from my last video. I wanted to kind of base it off of this team. This is actually very similar to my first playthrough team of Sun and Moon, but um and then I like all the other, major characters that appeared. It's just a very, very good piece of art here. But yeah, let's get right into the actual admins, and uh we're gonna see some familiar faces here. First off, Archie. Now, the concept of Rainbow Rocket is very it's very interesting because the idea is every single major trainer in Team Rainbow Rocket is a is a boss of a previous villain team that come from a reality where they won in that world. Either the protagonist wasn't there or they got beaten to the point where the villain was able to succeed and catch their legendary. So in this reality, this is a version of Sapphire where he actually succeeded in catching Kyogre and flooding the world, making it so that there's only water. One little issue with that is they specifically took Archie and Maxie from Ruby and Sapphire, not Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire. So even though this Archie, who looks like that, has a muck, he has a muck, even though this Archie didn't have a muck. Only the one from Alpha Sapphire had muck. You could argue that this is a different dimension, so maybe there is a different reality where this Archie has a muck and also got Kyogre, but just to not overcomplicate things and in fact, heavily simplify things, I'm going to use essentially take the teams that I've crafted throughout and just add a legendary on. Now, that does raise the question, should we keep Mega Sharpedo and Mega Camerupt? And I think yes. I think since Generation 7 is a generation that had Mega Evolutions accessible, I think they should all have Mega Evolutions. It's weird that Lysander has a Mega Evolution and then gets this right after doesn't, and then Giovanni right after does. So I think they all should have Mega Evolutions. Now, that does mean that he should have his Tentacruel from the team that I fixed, his Mega Sharpedo, and then Primal Kyogre. I am taking the Archie from Alpha Sapphire and putting him here where he has a Mega Sharpedo and a Primal Kyogre. Now, fun fact about Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon, their Mega Stones don't work the same way that other Mega Stones do. You don't Mega Evolve during the battle. It's technically called Primal Reversion. So once Kyogre is sent out, if it's holding its stone, it'll immediately, Primal Revert into Primal Kyogre. Therefore, you can have a Primal Kyogre and a Mega Sharpedo on the same team. So the reason why I'm okay with this is because all of the other ones past Archie and Maxie, all of them are going to have teams of six. They're five from the game plus a legendary. Whereas Archie and Maxie, because they have a mega and a primal legendary, I'm more okay with them only having five Pokemon. So there you go. I originally was like, oh, maybe they should have Muck and Tentacruel, but no, the Primal Kyogre counts as two Pokemon, so I think that's fine. So very similar to Archie. Maxie looks like this is, Ruby version, but he had a Weezing. So I'm switching that out for the Golem and then Mega Camerupt and Primal Groudon. I like the idea of his dual aces being both ground fire types now. I think that's a lot of fun. Next up, Cyrus. For any that switch the legendary based on the game you're playing, I'm just gonna be just kind of pick one at random to do like for here for like the original team I put Dialga and then for the fixed team I'm gonna put Palkia, etc. So I understand why they did it, but it's very weird. And I actually don't even really understand. It's very weird that for all of the villain team leaders that had five or six Pokemon, they took away Pokemon so that they could have the legendary and still have five Pokemon. So for Cyrus, they took away his Gyarados and put in Dialga. Now that makes complete sense because, you know, it's a big deal that Lysander has his Mega Gyarados. So it would be weird if Cyrus has a Gyarados and then you immediately fight a Mega Gyarados. That would be a little awkward. However, it's apparently not awkward that you fight him with a Honchkrow and then Lysander also has Honchkrow. So, all that to say, like this is a very powerful team. However, given the fixes that I had made previously, um, well, he's gonna have this team: his Bronzong, Crobat, Mega Absol, Weavile, Honchkrow, Palkia. Yeah, we're just gonna say that someone on Team Rainbow Rocket either gave them Mega Stones or created Mega Stones, or these people, some even the ones that didn't originally have Mega Stones, they were given Mega Stones. And unfortunately, Weavile and Honchkrow never got a Mega Evolution, even now after, the Diamond and Pearl remake still didn't get Mega Evolutions. Absol did receive a Mega, so he should be a Mega here. Now for Lysander, again, like, especially compared to all the others, it just I don't know. There's just something off about this team, and I don't really know why. Like, I just don't feel me and Xiao here. It doesn't feel like it belongs in a villain team. Um, so yeah, we're going with the team that I fixed: Manectric, Machamp, Gliscor, Pyroar, Mega Gyarados, and Yveltal. So Gets is here. First of all, it's so funny watching this Ghetsis interact with all the other villain team leaders because all of them are in like, suits or like very, like very professional looking gear, and he's looking like this, like some eldritch demon. Like it would be one thing to say like, oh, they should have plucked him from Black and White 2, but then that guy would look way toned down and it wouldn't look as cool next to all the others. Plus, I like his interaction with Colress because this Getsus didn't know Colress yet. Um, but yeah, this is one of those examples where he had five or more Pokemon and they truncated it down to only five. They took away his Seismitoad and his Eelektross. If you have to have only five Pokemon, I personally would have removed Bisharp and given him Eelektross. I just feel Eelektross fits him better, but it's not a huge deal. Just the main problem is right now he's very weak to fighting. Yes, Cofagrigus is immune, but after that, his next three Pokemon are weak to fighting. I just think having more type variety with Eelektross would have really helped out here. So, yeah, my main fix would be Cofagrigus, Ferrothorn, Garbodor, Eelektross, Mega Hydreigon. Um, it's really weird that it's weird that they just stopped doing Mega Evolutions after Gen 6, but because they stopped doing Mega Evolutions after Gen 6, they just left Dragonite and Hydreigon without a Mega Evolution. Um, and I was like, oh, okay. So when making his team, I kind of considered, okay, what other Gen 5 Pokemon could I put on here to future-proof it to eventually give him a Mega Evolution? And you want to know who the only Gen 5 option I had was? Audino. And guesses should not have an Audino. Um, yeah. So I'm saying in my perfect reality, at some point, either in Oros or Gen 7, Hydreigon got a Mega Evolution. It seemed like a pretty easy one to do. Just give it more heads. You can even make it where it's on all fours and has some other ability that's not levitate. Like, there's just so many ways that Mega Hydreigon could have looked really, really cool. And I feel like Getsis, who kind of like prides himself, like in this story, he kind of like sees himself as like true boss of Rainbow Rocket somehow, even though he's clearly not. Um, his, ace, who's not the legendary, his ace deserved a Mega Stone. Now, you could argue that, oh, if you're creating one for Hydreigon, then maybe you should create one for Cyrus as well. And I thought about that. Um, like, I, I could easily, see a Mega Evolution for either Weavile or Honchkrow working, but because there are other options for Mega Evolutions available in the Platinum Pokedex with Absol or Houndoom, whichever you really prefer. Um, and also since Gets is so much later in the story, like the levels have gone up, that there is that progression there. I feel like it makes more sense to have Getsis have his Hydreigon be the Mega, whereas Cyrus is his Mega. He was just, the one Pokemon that he had that could Mega Evolve is able to. Hope that made sense. But yeah, the main for here, since you had to take away something, I just took away his Seismitoad and put Reshiram here instead. Now, lastly, Giovanni has Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, Rhyperior, Mewtwo. It's so weird that they took away his Mewtwo. I would even say get rid of Dugtrio. I feel like Mewtwo is way more synonymous with him. So yeah, that's what I did. I just gave back his Persian, and yeah, I think that is the dopest villain team on this entire presentation. Um, like I there are many others that I like, many other fixes that I really am really proud of, but just I don't know, something about me initially saying that Giovanni's team was already perfect. Like he says, yellow team's already perfect, and then bringing it all the way back around to be like his perfect yellow team plus a Mega Mewtwo. I don't know. I find that very satisfying. So after all that, thanks for watching. Please let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you disagree with any of my analysis of any of these villain team leaders. Do you agree with me that Honchkrow is more of it feels like more of Cyrus's ace than Weavile should have been? Do you agree that Lysander's team just feels out of place and a little weird? I know some people that don't really like the idea of Team Rainbow Rocket. How do you feel about that whole concept? Are there any major characters you feel I missed or misrepresented? Yeah, I'd like to hear all of that down below. And I've really enjoyed making these kinds of videos, and I'm steadily going towards my goal of eventually analyzing every single major trainer of these franchises. And I've really appreciated all of you coming along for the ride, and I'm would like to continue making these kinds of videos. Let me know what kinds of videos you would like to me to do down below as well. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.